Commander Marcus Cole had been alone on Outpost Theta 7 for 6 months. The small research station sat on a dead moon at the edge of human space. Nothing ever happened here. His job was simple: watch the stars, record data, and wait for his replacement to arrive. Marcus spent most of his days reading old books, exercising in the small gym, and talking to himself, just to hear a human voice. The loneliness was heavy, but he had learned to carry it. Some men broke under isolation. Marcus had simply grown quieter, harder, like stone shaped by endless wind. On the night everything changed, Marcus was eating dinner in the observation room. Through the wide window, he could see a million stars burning against the black emptiness of space. He had just taken a bite of his meal when the sky split open. A crack of light appeared among the stars, growing wider and brighter until it hurt to look at. Marcus dropped his fork and stood up slowly, his heart beginning to pound. He had heard stories about rifts in space, doorways that led to places humans had never been. But those were just stories. Legends told by drunk pilots in cheap bars. The rift was real. And something was coming through. Ships emerged from the light. First 10, then 100, then 1,000. They kept coming, pouring out of the rift like black water from a broken dam. The vessels were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. They were angular and sharp, made of metal so dark it seemed to eat the light around it. They moved in perfect formation, spreading across the sky until they blocked out the stars themselves. Marcus counted until he lost count. There were thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. His training kicked in. He ran to the communication console and activated the emergency beacon. The signal would travel at faster than light speed, bouncing from relay to relay until it reached the nearest human fleet. But even at that speed, help was 3 weeks away. Maybe more. He was alone. Completely and totally alone. The largest ship in the alien fleet moved into orbit above the moon. It was massive beyond understanding, a floating mountain of black metal that stretched 5 kilometers from end to end. Towers rose from its surface like the spires of some dark cathedral. Lights glowed in its depths, red and cold, like the eyes of a predator watching from the shadows. Marcus stared at it through the observation window. His reflection stared back at him, a tired man with gray in his beard and scars on his hands. He was 43 years old. He had survived 2 wars, 3 failed marriages, and a childhood that would have broken most people. He had thought he understood fear. He had been wrong. The communication console crackled with static. Then a voice emerged, clear and sharp, speaking perfect English. It was a woman's voice, but there was something cold in it, something ancient and powerful. "I am Empress Velthara of the Dominion of Endless Night. My people have traveled the stars for 10,000 years. We have conquered 11,000 worlds. We have crushed civilizations that thought themselves eternal. We have ended species that dared to stand against us." Marcus listened, his mouth dry, his hands shaking slightly. "Your species is unknown to us," the Empress continued. "We discovered your signals drifting through space and followed them here. Now we wish to understand what you are. You will demonstrate your worth, human. Show us what your kind is capable of. If you fail to impress us, your species will be erased from existence. Every world you have touched will burn. Every trace of your civilization will be destroyed. It will be as if you never existed at all." The transmission fell silent. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing. 11,000 worlds. This empire had destroyed 11,000 civilizations, and now they wanted him to represent all of humanity. One man, one tired, lonely man on a forgotten moon at the edge of nowhere. He thought about his life. He thought about everyone he had ever known, every city he had ever visited, every child he had ever seen playing in the streets. All of it, all of humanity, weighed against whatever he did next. His hands stopped shaking. Something hard and cold settled in his chest, pushing the fear aside. It was not courage exactly. It was something older, something that lived in the bones of every human who had ever faced death and refused to look away. Marcus walked to the communication console and pressed the transmit button. His voice came out steady, surprising even himself. "This is Commander Marcus Cole of the United Earth Forces. I hear your challenge, Empress. But I have a request. Give me 24 hours to prepare. Then send whatever you want. I will show you what a human can do." There was a long pause. Marcus imagined the alien Empress on her massive ship, surrounded by advisors and warriors, considering his words. He was just one man asking for time. She had an army that had conquered galaxies. She could simply destroy him now and move on. But something in his voice must have interested her. When she spoke again, there was a hint of amusement in her tone. "You speak boldly for a creature standing alone against the infinite. Very well, human. You have your 24 hours. Use them wisely. When the time ends, I will send 100 of my eternal guard, the finest warriors in my dominion. They have never known defeat. They have crushed armies, toppled empires, brought entire worlds to their knees." Her voice grew quieter, almost gentle. "If you somehow survive until nightfall of the next day, your species will have earned our attention. You will be given a chance to prove yourselves further. But if you fall, as I expect you will, then your people will join the long list of species that exist only in our memory banks. This is not cruelty, human. This is simply the way of the universe. The weak die. The strong survive. Show me which one your kind truly is." The transmission ended. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stood alone in the observation room, staring at the alien fleet that filled the sky. 100 elite warriors. 24 hours to prepare. The survival of his entire species resting on his shoulders. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then he smiled, a thin and dangerous expression that would have worried anyone who knew him. "All right, then," he said to the empty room. "Let's get to work." He turned away from the window and walked toward the supply room. Behind him, the alien ships waited in the darkness like patient predators. They had conquered 11,000 worlds. They had never faced a human being. They had no idea what was coming. Marcus had 24 hours to prepare for battle against an empire that had crushed 11,000 worlds. Most men would have spent that time praying or crying or writing letters to loved ones. Marcus spent it building weapons. The outpost was a research station, not a military base. It had one pulse rifle with limited ammunition, a single defense turret that had been malfunctioning for weeks, and basic survival equipment. Not much to work with. But Marcus had learned long ago that a weapon was just a tool, and tools could be made from anything. He started in the mining storage room. The outpost had been built to study the moon's mineral deposits, which meant there were drilling charges, explosive compounds, and heavy equipment scattered throughout the facility. Marcus began gathering everything that could explode. Cut, burn, or crushed out as he worked, small floating spheres descended from the sky. Hundreds of them spread out around the outpost, hovering silently, watching. Marcus realized they were drones, recording devices sent by the Empress. She wanted to watch him prepare. She wanted to see what a human did when faced with certain death. Fine, Marcus thought. Let her watch. Let them all watch. He carried armfuls of mining charges to the canyon that surrounded the outpost. The station sat at the bottom of a natural bowl, with high walls of rock rising on all sides. There was only one easy path in and out, a narrow passage where the canyon walls came close together. This would be his killing ground. Marcus climbed the canyon walls, planting charges at key points. He positioned them carefully, calculating angles and blast patterns. When triggered, these charges would bring tons of rock crashing down on anyone caught below. It would not stop an army, but it would slow them down. It would make them afraid. The drones followed him everywhere, recording his every move. Marcus found himself talking to them, partly to stay sane, partly because he wanted the Empress to understand. "You want to know about humans?" he said, wiring a charge to a detonator. "Here is the first lesson. We have been killing each other for 200,000 years. We started with rocks and sticks. Then we invented spears. Then swords. Then guns. Then bombs that could destroy entire cities. We have spent our entire existence finding better ways to kill." He finished the connection and moved to the next position. "Your Empress has conquered 11,000 worlds. I believe her, but I bet most of those worlds surrendered when they saw her fleet. I bet they looked at those ships and decided fighting was pointless. They gave up before the battle even started." Marcus paused and looked directly at one of the drones. "Humans do not do that. We do not know how. It is not in our nature. We fight. Even when we cannot win, even when hope is gone, even when death is certain, we fight. It is the only thing we know how to do." He climbed down from the canyon wall and returned to the outpost. The defense turret was waiting in the main hall, a heavy automatic weapon mounted on a rotating platform. It had been broken for months, its targeting system damaged by a power surge. Marcus had reported the problem and been told a repair team would arrive eventually. Eventually had never come. Now he would fix it. Himself, Marcus opened the turret's control panel and studied the wiring inside. He was not an engineer, but he had spent enough time around military equipment to understand the basics. The targeting computer was dead, but the gun itself still worked. All he needed was a new way to aim it. He worked through the night, rewiring the turret to respond to motion sensors instead of the broken targeting system. It would not be precise, but it would fire at anything that moved through its field of view. He positioned it at the narrow passage, pointing toward the only entrance to the canyon. While the turret charged, Marcus returned to the supply room. He found a pressurized fuel tank used for the station's heating system. He found welding equipment. He found lengths of pipe and sheets of metal. By morning, he had built a FLAMETROWER. It was ugly and crude, strapped to his forearm with leather belts and connected to a fuel tank on his back. The trigger was a simple button under his thumb. When pressed, it would spray burning fuel in a wide arc. It would not stop an armored warrior, but it would hurt them. It would make them hesitate. Marcus tested it in the open ground behind the station. A stream of fire erupted from his arm, bright orange and roaring. The heat washed over his face. The drones recorded everything. "Lesson number 2, Marcus said to the cameras. Humans love fire. We have worshipped it since we lived in caves. It is our oldest friend and our oldest weapon. Your soldiers might have armor that stops bullets. Let us see how it handles this." The hours passed quickly. Marcus worked without rest, building trap after trap. He rigged tripwires connected to explosives. He dug pits and filled them with sharpened metal stakes. He set up deadfalls that would drop heavy equipment on anyone who triggered them. He connected the station's power core to a directional EMP device that would fry electronics in a focused beam. The canyon became a maze of death, filled with hidden dangers that only Marcus knew about. As the sun began to rise over the moon's horizon, Marcus stood in the center of his battlefield. He was exhausted, covered in dirt and grease and sweat. His hands were raw from work. His body ached from climbing and carrying and building. But he was ready. The Empress's voice echoed across the landscape, broadcast from the massive ship still hanging in orbit. "Your time has ended, human. My eternal guard are prepared. 100 warriors, each one worth 1,000 ordinary soldiers. They have trained for centuries. They have killed millions. They have never lost a battle." Marcus checked his pulse rifle, and made sure his flamethrower was fully fueled. "I am curious," the Empress continued. "You have worked hard through the night. You have built clever traps. But surely you know it will not be enough. Surely you understand that you cannot win. So why do you fight? What drives you to struggle against the inevitable?" Marcus thought about the question. He thought about his father, who had worked himself to death in a factory to give his children a better life. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in a war and never talked about what he had seen. He thought about every human who had ever stood against impossible odds and refused to back down. "I fight because that is what humans do," he said simply. "We fight because fighting is who we are. Even if I die today, even if your warriors kill me in the first minute, I will die standing. I will die with a weapon in my hand and fire in my heart. And somewhere, someone will remember. Someone will tell the story of the human who faced the Dominion alone and did not run." He smiled, a hard and bitter expression. "That is what drives me, Empress. Not hope, not faith. Just pure human stubbornness." There was a moment of silence. Then the Empress spoke again, and there was something new in her voice. Interest, perhaps, or respect. "Then show me, human. Show me this stubbornness. My eternal guard, descend now. Survive until nightfall, and you will have proven that your species deserves to exist. Fail, and you will be forgotten, like all the others who came before." Black shapes appeared in the sky, dropping from the orbiting ships like dark rain. The Eternal Guard were coming. Marcus raised his rifle and waited. The drop pods hit the ground like black meteors, slamming into the rocky surface of the moon with tremendous force. Dust and debris exploded outward from each impact point. When the dust settled, the pods opened and the Eternal Guard emerged. Marcus watched from his hiding spot among the rocks. His breath caught in his throat. The Guard were terrifying. Each one stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in armor that seemed to flow and shift like liquid metal. Their helmets had no faces, just smooth, dark surfaces that reflected the dim light of the distant sun. They carried weapons that hummed with energy, long rifles that glowed with an inner fire. They moved with perfect precision, forming into groups of 10 without any visible communication. Their discipline was absolute. Their confidence was obvious. These were soldiers who had never known defeat, warriors who had crushed entire armies and burned countless worlds, 100 of them, against one tired human with homemade weapons. Marcus felt fear trying to crawl up from his stomach. He pushed it down. Fear was useless now. All that mattered was the fight. The Guard began advancing toward the canyon, spreading out in a wide line. They moved slowly, carefully, scanning the terrain for threats. Marcus waited. He needed them closer. He needed them in the kill zone. The first group entered the narrow passage. 20 of them, walking in pairs, their weapons raised. They passed the first tripwire without triggering it. They passed the second. Marcus had hidden them well, buried under dust and stone. The third tripwire was different. It was connected to the mining charges on the canyon wall. A guard's foot touched the wire. There was a soft click dot, then the world exploded. The canyon wall collapsed in an avalanche of fire and rock. Massive boulders crashed down on the advancing soldiers, crushing them beneath tons of stone. The sound was deafening, a roar that echoed across the barren landscape. Dust filled the air, thick and choking. When the rumbling stopped, 12 Eternal Guard lay buried under the rubble. Dead in the first 30 seconds of battle. Marcus was already moving. He ran along the top of the canyon, firing down at the surviving guards below. His pulse rifle cracked again and again, sending bright bolts of energy into the dust cloud. Most shots bounced off their armor, but a few found gaps, weak points where the liquid metal did not cover. 2 more guards fell. The survivors reacted with frightening speed. They scattered, taking cover behind rocks and debris. Return fire streaked up toward Marcus, beams of energy that melted stone wherever they touched. He dove behind a boulder just as the rock where he had been standing erupted into molten fragments. Impressive, the Empress's voice echoed across the battlefield. Her drones still hovered overhead, recording everything. He uses the terrain against them. He fights like prey that has learned to bite back. Marcus ignored her. He slid down a rope he had set up earlier, dropping to a lower level of the canyon. The guards were recovering now, reorganizing their formation. He needed to keep them off balance. He triggered another charge. This one did not bring down a wall. Instead, it sent a shower of metal fragments screaming through the air at incredible speed. 3 guards caught the blast full force. Their armor held against most of the shrapnel, but the impact knocked them backward, disrupting their advance. Marcus burst from cover with his flamethrower blazing. Fire roared out in a wide arc, washing over the nearest guards. They stumbled back, their armor glowing red from the heat. One fell, the joints of his armor melting together. Another dropped his weapon as the metal in his hands became too hot to hold. The pulse rifle came up. Marcus fired at the weaponless guard, catching him in the neck where the armor was thinnest. The warrior collapsed, 17 dead. 83 to go. The morning became a nightmare of fire and blood. Marcus used every trick he knew, every trap he had built. He lured guards into deadfalls and watched heavy equipment crush them. He caught them with tripwires and blew them apart with hidden charges. He used the EMP device to disable their weapons, then attacked while they were helpless. He fought dirty. He fought mean. He fought like a cornered animal with nothing to lose. A guard got close enough to swing at him with an energy blade. Marcus ducked under the blow and drove a mining pick into the gap between the warrior's helmet and chestplate. Hot alien blood sprayed across his face. He did not stop to wipe it away. Another guard tried to grab him from behind. Marcus triggered a small explosive he had taped to his own belt, throwing them both backward. The blast shattered the guard's arm. Marcus was up first, putting 3 shots into the wounded warrior before he could recover. "He is insane," one of the guards said, his voice broadcast by the drones. "He attacks us with no regard for his own safety." "That is not insanity," the Empress responded, her voice thoughtful. "That is something else. Something I have not seen before." By noon, the canyon floor was littered with bodies. 37 Eternal Guard lay dead, killed by traps, by fire, by the desperate fury of a single human being. Marcus had taken wounds as well. A blade had cut his shoulder. An energy blast had burned his side. His left hand was broken from blocking a blow that would have taken his head off, but he was still fighting. The remaining guards had changed their tactics. They no longer advanced in formation. Instead, they crept forward slowly, checking every step for traps, covering each other with overlapping fields of fire. They had learned to fear the canyon. They had learned to fear him. Marcus watched them from a new hiding spot, his breath coming hard and fast. His ammunition was running low. His flamethrower was nearly empty. Most of his traps had been triggered. He was running out of ways to kill, but the sun was still high in the sky. There were hours left until nightfall. He checked his pulse rifle. 23 shots remaining. He had a knife at his belt and the mining pick in his hand. He had a few explosive charges left, small ones, barely powerful enough to dent their armor. It would have to be enough. "Come on then," Marcus whispered, rising from his cover. "Come and get me." He charged down the canyon slope toward the advancing guards, screaming a wordless battle cry. Fire erupted from his arm. His rifle cracked. A guard fell, then another. The remaining warriors turned to face him, raising their weapons. Energy beams shrieked through the air. Marcus felt pain blossom in his leg, his chest, his arm. He kept running. He crashed into the nearest guard and drove his mining pick through the warrior's faceplate. They fell together, rolling across the bloody ground. Marcus was up first, always up first, because stopping meant death, and he was not ready to die. The battle continued above. The Empress watched in silence. Her hands gripped the arms of her throne. In 10,000 years of conquest, she had never seen anything like this. A single human, wounded and outmatched, fighting an army that had conquered galaxies and winning. The afternoon sun hung low over the canyon, casting long shadows across the blood-soaked ground. Marcus leaned against a boulder, trying to catch his breath. Every part of his body screamed with pain. His left arm hung useless at his side, broken in 3 places from a blow he had barely survived. A deep wound ran across his ribs where an energy blade had cut through his shirt and into his flesh. He had cauterized it with his own flamethrower, pressing the burning metal against his skin to stop the bleeding. The smell of his own cooked flesh still filled his nose. 61 Eternal Guard lay dead across the canyon. 61 of the finest warriors in the Dominion, killed by one man with crude weapons and stubborn determination. But 39 remained. And Marcus was running out of everything. His pulse rifle was empty. His flamethrower had burned through its last fuel an hour ago. He had no more explosive charges, no more traps, no more tricks. All he had left was a salvaged guard weapon he barely understood how to use, and the sharpened mining pick that had become his constant companion. The surviving guards had stopped advancing. They formed a wide circle around the canyon, watching him from a distance. Marcus could feel their confusion, their hesitation. They had expected to crush him in minutes. Now, hours later, more than half their force was dead, and they were afraid to approach. The Empress's voice echoed across the battlefield. "Why do you continue, human?" Marcus laughed. It was a broken sound, more cough than laugh, and it hurt his damaged ribs. "That is a stupid question, is it? You cannot win. Look at yourself. You are barely standing. Your weapons are gone. Your body is failing. Even if you survive this day, what then? I will simply send more warriors. I have millions of them. You have only yourself." Marcus looked up at the massive ship hanging in orbit. Even now, with death so close he could taste it, he refused to look away. "You want to know why I continue?" He pushed himself off the boulder and stood upright, ignoring the pain that shot through his entire body. "I continue because somewhere out there, my people are looking at the stars. They are wondering if we are alone in the universe. They are hoping, like every species hoax, that the cosmos is not as cold and empty as it seems." He gestured at the bodies scattered around the canyon. "Those people, my people, they do not know that their survival depends on what happens here today. They do not know that an empire with 11,000 conquests is deciding whether to wipe them out. They are just living their lives, raising their children, dreaming their dreams." His voice grew harder, fiercer. "But I know what is at stake, and I will fight for every single one of them. I will fight for the mother putting her baby to sleep. I will fight for the old man watching the sunset. I will fight for the children who have not been born yet, who deserve a chance to exist." Marcus gripped his mining pick and raised it toward the watching guards. "Your Empress asked what drives me. This is what drives me. Not hope, not courage. Just the simple fact that somewhere, someone I will never meet is counting on me, even though they do not know it. I refuse to let them down." The canyon fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. The Empress spoke again, and there was something different in her voice now. The cold amusement was gone. In its place was something that sounded almost like respect. "You are dying, human. Your wounds are fatal. Even if my guards never touch you again, you will not survive the night. Your body is failing. Your blood is draining into the sand. You have already lost. Marcus smiled. Blood stained his teeth. Then come and finish it. If I am already dead, what are your warriors afraid of? He could feel the guards watching him, feel their uncertainty. They were the finest soldiers in an empire of 11,000 worlds. They had crushed armies without effort. They had never faced anything like this. A single human, broken and bleeding and certain to die, challenging them to come and take him. You know what your problem is, Empress? Marcus said, his voice carrying across the silent battlefield. You have conquered too many worlds that surrendered. You have destroyed too many species that gave up without fighting. You have forgotten what it looks like when someone truly does not know how to quit. He pointed at the bodies of the fallen guards. I killed 61 of your finest warriors with rocks and fire and sharp metal. I did it while wounded. I did it while outmatched. I did it because that is what humans do. We fight. We have always fought. We will always fight. It is the only thing we truly understand. His legs were shaking now. The blood loss was catching up with him. He could feel darkness creeping at the edges of his vision. But he would not fall. Not yet. Not while there was still breath in his lungs and enemies in front of him. So come on, he said, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. Come and see what it costs to kill a human. Come and learn why my species has survived every disaster, every war, every catastrophe that should have destroyed us. We are still here. We will always be here, because we do not know any other way to be. The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then she gave an order. The remaining guards attacked as one. They came from every direction, moving fast, their weapons blazing. Marcus met them with a scream that echoed off the canyon walls. A sound of pure defiance that seemed too large to come from one wounded man. He killed the first guard with the mining pick, driving it through the warrior's chest. He killed the second with the salvaged weapon, firing point blank into the soldier's helmet. The third he grabbed and threw into the fourth, sending them both tumbling down a slope. Energy beams tore through him. Blades cut his flesh. Armored fists broke his bones. But he kept fighting. He kept killing. Every time they knocked him down, he got back up. Every time they thought he was finished, he found another way to hurt them. The sun continued its slow journey toward the horizon. The shadows grew longer. The pile of bodies grew higher, and still Marcus fought on, a human hurricane of blood and fury, showing the Dominion what it truly meant to face a species that had never learned to surrender. The sun set over Outpost Theta 7, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. The light fell across a canyon that had become a graveyard. Marcus Cole lay in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by the bodies of 93 Eternal Guard. His eyes were still open, staring at the darkening sky. His chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. His hands still clutched the mining pick, even though his fingers had long since lost the strength to lift it. He was dying. He knew it with absolute certainty. Too much blood lost. Too many wounds. His body was broken beyond repair. But he had survived until sunset. He had done what he promised. 7 guards had retreated. 7 of the finest warriors in the Dominion had turned and fled from a single human being. They had carried their wounded with them, moving quickly, as if afraid that the dying man might somehow rise and chase them down. It was the first retreat in the Dominion's recorded history. A column of light descended from the Empress's flagship, bright and golden against the gathering darkness. It touched the ground near Marcus, and figures began to appear. First came soldiers in ceremonial armor, their weapons sheathed, their postures respectful. Then came attendants carrying equipment. Then came advisors and officials, the high court of an empire that spanned galaxies. And finally, she came herself, Empress Volthara of the Dominion of Endless Night, stepped out of the light and onto the blood-soaked ground of an insignificant moon. She was not what Marcus had expected. She was smaller than her soldiers, almost delicate in appearance. Her skin was the color of polished black stone, smooth and perfect. Her eyes held the cold fire of dying stars, ancient and powerful beyond measure. She wore no armor. She carried no weapon. She did not need them. Power radiated from her like heat from a sun. Behind her, thousands of soldiers descended from the sky. They filled the canyon, lining the walls, spreading across the rocky plain. An entire legion summoned to witness whatever happened next. The Empress walked through the field of bodies, stepping carefully around the fallen guards. Her expression was unreadable. When she reached Marcus, she stopped and looked down at him. "In 11,000 conquests," she said softly, "no single warrior has ever done what you have done today. You killed 93 of my eternal guard. You forced 7 to retreat. You survived from dawn to dusk against odds that should have been impossible." Marcus tried to speak but could not find the strength. Blood bubbled at his lips. The Empress knelt beside him, bringing her face close to his. Her eyes searched his, looking for something. "You are broken," she continued. "You are dying. You have perhaps minutes left to live. And yet, even now, your hand reaches for a weapon." It was true. Marcus's fingers were twitching, trying to lift the mining pick for one final swing. He could not help it. It was instinct, deeper than thought, deeper than pain. Velthara smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it transformed her face. For just a moment, she looked almost human. "What are you?" she asked. Marcus found his voice, weak and broken, but still there. "Human," he whispered. "Just human." The Empress stood and turned to face her legion. Thousands of soldiers stood at attention, their eyes fixed on their ruler. The drones hovered overhead, broadcasting to 1,000 worlds. "Today I have witnessed something I believed impossible," Velthara announced, her voice carrying across the canyon and beyond, reaching every corner of her empire. A single warrior fought not for victory, but because fighting is what his people are. He did not expect to win. He did not fight for glory or reward. He fought because his species does not know how to do anything else. She paused, letting her words sink in. "We have conquered 11,000 worlds. Most of them surrendered when they saw our fleet. The ones that fought were crushed within days. We learned to view other species as weak, as prey, as obstacles to be removed." Her eyes swept across her assembled forces. "We were wrong." The Legion shifted, uncertain. This was not what they had expected to hear. "The Dominion does not conquer this species," the Empress declared. "We do not subjugate them. We do not test them again. What I have seen today has shown me that humans are not prey. They are not slaves waiting to be claimed. They are something else entirely." She turned back to look at Marcus, dying on the ground. "They are survivors. They are fighters. They are the most stubborn, most determined, most terrifyingly relentless species I have ever encountered. And I have lived for 10,000 years." Medical drones descended from the flagship, surrounding Marcus in golden light. He felt warmth spreading through his body, felt his wounds beginning to close, felt life flowing back into him. "Sleep, human," the Empress said, her voice gentle now. "When you wake, you will be healed. You will speak for your species. You will help your people understand what they face and what they might become." Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to say that he was no diplomat, no leader, just a tired soldier who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the golden light was pulling him down, down into darkness, down into rest. The last thing he heard was the Empress's voice, speaking to her legion and to the watching galaxy. "The humans are coming. They do not know it yet, but they will spread across the stars like fire. They will face challenges that would break other species. They will stumble and fall and suffer. A voice rang with certainty, with prophecy, with something that sounded almost like admiration. And they will rise again. Every time. Because that is what they do. That is what they are. They are humans. She looked up at the stars, at the infinite darkness that her empire had claimed, and they are magnificent. Marcus slept. Around him, the dominion of endless night began to change. An empire that had conquered 11,000 worlds, now prepared to meet a species it could not conquer. Not because humans were stronger, not because they were smarter, not because they had better weapons or greater numbers, but because they did not know how to quit Dot, and in the end, that made all the difference.